This is happening right now. The United States and Iran are talking, not through back channels, not through intermediaries, direct face-to-face negotiations. And as of this morning, April 3rd, 2026, President Trump has ordered a halt to all American strikes on Iranian power plants and energy infrastructure. Oil just cratered $7.50 in a single session. Markets are exploding upward, and the entire geopolitical order of the Middle East may have just shifted on its axis. Do not look away. Let me tell you why today matters more than almost any day in the last 2 decades of U.S.-Iran relations. For months, the Middle East has been on a knife's edge. American strikes on Iranian energy infrastructure had been escalating since late 2025, pushing global oil prices above $98 a barrel and triggering genuine fears of a full-scale regional war. Shipping through the Strait of Hormuz, where roughly 21% of the world's daily oil consumption passes, was under constant threat. European allies were nervous, Asian importers were scrambling, and ordinary people from Detroit to Delhi were watching fuel prices eat into their paychecks. Then this morning, Trump walked to the podium and used a word nobody expected: productive. He called the talks productive, and with that single word, the pressure valve on the entire global economy cracked open. Here are the numbers you need to know. Oil dropped $7.50 to settle at $90.75 per barrel, the largest single-day decline since March 2020, when COVID crashed demand. The S&P 500 surged 2.2%. The Dow Jones jumped 1,025 points in a single session. The Nasdaq climbed 2.17%. All 11 sectors of the S&P 500 traded higher, every single one, from energy to tech to consumer staples. That tells you something critical. This is not sector rotation. This is not traders playing games. This is the entire market collectively exhaling because the probability of a catastrophic Middle Eastern war just dropped significantly. And here is a number that matters even more. Iran was exporting roughly 1.8 million barrels of oil per day in February 2026, much of it to China, through sanctions-skirting channels. If these talks lead to any kind of framework agreement, even a partial one, analysts at Goldman Sachs estimate an additional 500,000 to 800,000 barrels per day could re-enter legitimate global markets within 6 to 9 months. That would fundamentally reshape the supply picture. Now let me tell you what this really means, because most outlets are going to frame this as a simple peace story. Good guys talked, crisis over, markets happy. That is not what is happening. What is actually happening is a strategic recalculation by both sides driven by domestic pressure, not goodwill. Trump is staring at midterm dynamics and a consumer base furious about energy costs. Average U.S. gasoline prices hit $4.31 per gallon in March 2026. His approval rating on economic management dropped to 41% in the latest Gallup poll from late March. He needs a win that voters can feel at the pump. Iran, meanwhile, is dealing with its own crisis. The strikes on power infrastructure knocked out an estimated 35% of Iran's grid capacity in key provinces like Isfahan and Khuzestan. Rolling blackouts have fueled domestic unrest. Supreme Leader Khamenei, now 86 years old, is navigating a succession crisis while trying to keep the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps from torpedoing negotiations they see as capitulation. Both sides came to this table not because they want peace. They came because the alternative became too expensive. That is an important distinction. Agreements born from mutual exhaustion can hold, but they are fragile. One miscalculation, one rogue drone strike, one leaked intelligence document, and this whole thing collapses overnight. And here's the angle nobody is talking about. The country watching these talks most nervously is not Israel. It is not Saudi Arabia. It is Russia. Think about it. Moscow has been benefiting enormously from elevated oil prices, funding its war effort and budget. Brent crude above $95 was a lifeline for the Kremlin. Russia's 2026 federal budget was built on an assumption of oil at $88 per barrel. If US-Iran talks succeed and Iranian oil floods back into legitimate markets, prices could slide towards $75 or even $70 by early 2027. That does not just hurt Russia's revenue. It undermines Putin's entire strategic position. He loses leverage over European energy security. He loses the fiscal cushion funding operations in Ukraine. In a strange twist of geopolitics, a US-Iran deal could end up being one of the most effective pieces of economic pressure on Moscow that Washington has produced in years, and it would not cost a single dollar in sanctions enforcement. Sometimes your enemy's enemy making peace with you hurts a completely different enemy more. That is the kind of fourth-dimensional chess that rarely makes headlines but reshapes the world. Now, I want to be clear. Analysts at Eurasia Group gave these talks only a 35% chance of producing a lasting framework by the end of 2026. The history of US-Iran diplomacy is littered with false starts. The JCPOA took years to negotiate and collapsed within 3 years of signing. Hardliners in Tehran and hawks in Washington both have every incentive to sabotage progress. The halt in strikes is not a peace deal. It is a pause, and pauses end. But today, right now, on April 3rd, 2026, the world is a measurably less dangerous place than it was yesterday. Oil is cheaper, markets are up, and two nations that have been locked in hostility since 1979 are sitting across from each other and using the word productive. That may not sound like much, but in the Middle East, it is everything. If this surprised you, hit like and subscribe. We cover what mainstream media ignores, the connections they miss, the angles they are afraid to explore. This is the Geo Brief, and we are just getting started.